Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello Scott, how are you doing?
Hello, Josh, my friend. There's a big old thing developing initially on Bloomberg, has also been confirmed by Eurogamer, that we're going to be getting eyes on the new Nintendo Switch before E3, which puts it at the next couple of weeks for a full-on announcement. Some people blowing up over on social media thinking something's going to happen today because Nintendo, the Nintendo US branch are about to go on a 4-day Memorial Day weekend holiday type thing. So maybe it's going to be dropping immediately. Maybe it's going to, knowing our luck, it'll drop as we're talking about this.
Probably.
But until then, there's quite a bit of stuff to break down. So like I said, this originated over on Bloomberg, came from Takashi Mochizuki, and then it's also been confirmed by Eurogamer as well. So the prevailing theory, or the prevailing evidence and stuff, is that the system itself is releasing in September or October. But just to read a passage from the Bloomberg report, the new console, likely to be priced higher than the $299 original, may be announced ahead of the E3 conference starting June 12th to allow publishers to showcase their full range of Switch games at the global event. It will be sold alongside the $199 Switch Lite, with the standard Switch phased out over time. Now this was confirmed, the report itself confirmed by Eurogamer, Tom Phillips at Eurogamer, who said that a pre-E3 airing does allow Nintendo to focus its E3 reveals on its upcoming software lineup, where fans are hoping to hear updates from the long-awaited Breath of the Wild 2 and the long-awaited Metroid Prime 4. Now there are some specs included in the Bloomberg report as well as to what the new system's going to be, but what do you make of all this madness?
Scott Telford, the closer we get to this reveal, the weight is lifted off my shoulders, because this is practically like the gaming industry's worst kept secret at this point in terms of things that are yet to be revealed. You know, we've done videos on it since the start of this year when it started picking up steam, but it's been rumored for years and years now. So the idea that we might get a look at it before E3, and E3 itself is only in a few weeks, that's awesome. I love the fact that they might be putting the console out first so they can just spend the direct at E3 focusing on what games are going to come out for it. I think that's a really cool move, and as someone who just wants more excuses to either play his old Switch or get this new one with all of the fancy specs that it has, I just hope that they've got those games to kind of back it up, because the new console is all well and great, but as we've seen across a bunch of other companies in the past, if you don't have the games to entice people in and make the most of the potential of it, you might as well just be giving people like a really expensive brick.
What was that stupid thing that was had the Android software in it, and it was a cube and it had the Ouya, like that was what the Ouya was just sort of like, here's a little tiny chipset inside a literal brick being sold to people. These specifications for the system from the Bloomberg report are that it'll be a 7-inch Samsung display, an OLED display, with a faster NVIDIA Core graphics silicon, making it capable of 4K output when docked to a TV. It's already done the rounds. We've done a few videos on this before about how Nintendo have been embracing NVIDIA's DLSS technology, which is deep learning super sampling tech, which is apparently a software side solution to the likes of frame rate and resolution problems, which No Man's Sky or Hello Games put out a demo of No Man's Sky running in VR with DLSS on, and it was running in a way higher and way more stable frame rate and resolution together compared to the standard PS4 or PS5 version, and so it seems like that's going to be the thing that is going to let Nintendo catch up to PS5, Series X, whatever, and maybe let them have a baseline of 4K 60 on games like, maybe even retroactively on games like Breath of the Wild, or at least going forward. But like you said, they're going to need a showcase of games, and the likes of Metroid Prime 4, Bayonetta 3, like there are some games that are more processor intensive that they could just go, hey look, by the way, this thing's running on a Switch Pro or whatever it is at the end of those pieces of gameplay footage. So I'm pretty psyched. I mean, my Switch, it's 2017, it's been going for obviously 4 years, just sounds like a broken Hoover at this point. It doesn't sound reliable. Whenever I put it on, it just kind of goes and it freaks out, and I'm just like, oh, were you always planned this way to make way for your your follow-up or whatever? But also to throw in, before I pass it back to you, there are a bunch of Switch games known for terrible performance, and I think the Switch is known for barely being able to handle the likes of open world games. Various Assassin's Creed games run pretty badly on the Switch. Outer Worlds ran like hell on the Switch, notably bad, where it barely could even load in art assets. It was just really blurry. It looked like Google Earth. Really, really bad. WWE 2K20 was absolutely horrific. Pretty much ran in slow motion. I think they ended up wiping it off the store eventually because they just couldn't get it to run.
Wow.
But what's your general thoughts on, well, first of all, the DLSS stuff, letting them catch up, the specs, and the idea of them improving what the Switch is?
Well, obviously, Nintendo at the moment, they're not in need of a proper generational refresh in the conventional sense. There's no reason for them to move away from the Switch as a concept, the Switch as a brand, because it's still selling really well. There's still so much, interest in the console itself and the way that obviously you have this cool docking system. So that is a kind of explanation of why they don't need to release something entirely brand new. That said, with the Xbox Series X, with the PlayStation 5 coming out, I am, at least personally, of the opinion that they do need a little bit more power, because like you said, when it comes to a lot of those third-party games, especially those bigger ones, and games are only going to get bigger with the new generation being ushered in, I feel like the original model would have struggled in that regard. And I also want to see, at least a little bit of new technology be utilized by these franchise games that we're all really looking forward to, like Breath of the Wild 2, like Metroid, like Bayonetta and stuff like that. So for me, I'm tech hungry when it comes to consoles anyway. So I've been kind of wanting some kind of refresh, something that makes the most of my 4K television, because I've said in these videos previously that when it came to like the Switch base model, I actually played that handheld, which is very out of character for me personally. I rarely ever played it on the television, so I played Breath of the Wild handheld and stuff like that.
Oh, that's weird. That.
I don't know what I was doing, man. I think it was because it was over Christmas at my parents. Didn't even have access to the television. They were watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians or something. But I'm just eager, like I said, to get back into the Switch ecosystem, because I haven't dabbled with it much at all this year. Every Sunday, the Switch sends me an alarm to tell me to go and Ring Fit, and I'd practically just smash it against the wall, and I'm like, no. Don't shame me into doing this again. So I'm looking forward to having new technology to look forward to, and most importantly, having hopefully some games in the fall that are going to make the use of it and get me as interested in it as I am the PlayStation 5 and Series X at the moment.
Well, that's kind of the thing. I mean, you talk about 2021 releases. I'm loving the Switch. The Switch is such an indie powerhouse. The new Pokemon Snap is brilliant. No one's talking about it. They did for the first few days. Monster Hunter Rise is also absolutely phenomenal. There are really good Switch games, but I think right now, like you said, across this year, it's easy to just kind of gravitate towards the PS5 or the new Xboxes, just because that's where a lot of the marketing push is. So maybe it's time for Nintendo to get back on the optics side of, hey, by the way, I mean, it's not like the Nintendo is a slouch sales-wise, but just sort of dominating social media again. Plus, in terms of upcoming projects, they showed Pokemon Arceus or Arceus, the new feudal Japanese style Pokemon, that in the gameplay that was revealed looked really framey, looked like it was really struggling. And I kind of hope that is because they were showing a really early build, and maybe that was always being made for the next Switch, and it can actually be this sort of just a way more stable game. I think as the PS5 and the Series X start to do more, or the Series S as well, start to make 60 FPS the baseline, then it's only going to highlight the fact that Nintendo are further behind when it comes to trying to match those kinds of games. Because even something like Knockout City, I've been playing a hell of a lot of Knockout City. That game's great. And I have that on all systems. I play that on PS5, Series X, and Switch. And I was surprised, because I want to play it in bed. I want to play it when I'm not playing it. I've got to play it. And but my whole thing with going between those different versions is that I was surprised that they got Knockout City working on Switch, because it felt like such a sublime, super fast reactive thing on the other consoles. But obviously it's a graphical step down to be able to match that in the first place. Yeah. And you do notice that if you've ever played something like, for me, LA Noire, I tried to play LA Noire on the Switch. If you play anything that is known for being on a bigger system, you can notice the graphical downturn on the Switch. Closing thoughts on the Switch Pro. Are you going to be getting one day one? What do you actually think of the of phasing out the regular Switch model too? I guess that means that maybe people don't use the Joy-Cons as much as they thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's. You know what, Scott? When it comes to them phasing out the old one, it depends entirely on price. You mentioned that the idea is that it's going to be more than the current base model. And if it's only marginally more expensive, I think it's okay to completely replace it. If it's a huge leap, I do worry that that's kind of cutting off part of the market perhaps who might not be able to afford that, or maybe even worse, have to resort to a Switch Lite. Not saying that's a bad console, but you're creating this big disparity between the two core machines that you have. I can't imagine that they'll, immediately just be like, okay, there's no more older Switches on sale, but you know what I mean? It depends on the price for me when it comes to that. Ultimately, whether or not I'll buy it day one depends on whether or not it'll actually be in stock, because I've been trying to get a Series X for an entire 6 months now, and that's been really difficult. And two, I keep reiterating, It depends on what software they have to launch alongside it, because while I am interested in playing Monster Hunter Rise in particular, and that might tempt me if it has some kind of advancements perhaps for the new Switch, I am holding out hope that Breath of the Wild 2 in particular is really close to launching. I really hope it is. But ultimately, I think it's promising. I think the specs sound interesting. I don't think it's like this completely radical overhaul. Like, it's not an entirely new generation, but it sounds like it's enough to keep me interested, and hopefully enough to keep me involved in the Switch ecosystem going forward. It might just give me that shock that gets me back in.
The thing that I really want is I want 4K menus, and I want them to do something with the eShop, because my god, that thing's eShop has stayed the same for 4 years, and it felt like a weird beta. It felt like we were early access in 2017 before they started charging for Nintendo Switch Online, and it was always this feeling that like, because they're going to be charging for it after a few months. Initially all that stuff was free across 2017, online multiplayer stuff. When they start charging for that, they'll revamp the Switch store, or the dashboard will look better, the eShop will look better, and they've just left it. It's just this weird web store that you sort of beam into, this weird portal, and it doesn't feel good. It's not a nice time.
It's funny what you said about the 60 frames per second thing becoming the norm on next gen consoles as well, and not to drag this video on for longer than it needs to be, but that's I almost feel like I've raised my quality of living when it comes to that now. I'm so used to 60 frames per second now that going back does feel a little bit lesser. I kind of finally understand what all of the PC fans have been going on about for like decades and decades now, because going back to 30 FPS, I do feel like it's a bit different, it's a bit of a step down, and hopefully Switch games, can reach that more consistently with this upgrade. That's my hope.
Yeah. No, I'm absolutely the same way. 60 is the new baseline. 30 feels like sludge. Couldn't be more wrong. The PC folk have been correct for many years. But it's just, we'll have to see how it goes. But yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments below. What do you want to see from a new Switch? What kind of games do you want to see alongside it? And what sort of specs are you looking forward to? For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
And we'll catch you next time.
Bye.